What came first, the chicken or the egg? How does the body know how to ride a bicycle or do the Macarena without thinking about it? What is the soul? If a tree falls in the forest and no one is around to hear it, does it still make a sound? And is there such a thing as mind over matter? People have been pondering deep questions for millennia, but it all goes back to one. What is consciousness, the body, mind, matter, or the soul? They say, I think, therefore I am. But what's the true power of our minds? How do our brains, minds, and spirits bring us things like works of art, inventions, music, and enlightenment? This may be the very deepest topic that exists in the cosmos. So let's dive deep into it. From the pineal gland to the brain, to the highest heights of heaven, to supernormal abilities. How does it all come together? You may have thought about it before, but you've never heard about the truth like this. Join Edge of Wonder for the Power of the Mind, Part 1. Fantastic superpowers and the brain.
Rob, what are you trying to do there?
I'm concentrating.
Yeah, I see that. But concentrating on what?
I'm gonna manifest some spicy peanuts, Ben. I'm hungry.
Yeah, Rob, I don't think that's quite how the power of the mind works.
I told you.
That's totally how it works. These are delicious.
Okay, are you sure that was the power of the mind, or is that Eric's legendary editing
What are
skills?
you trying to say, Ben? I don't have this power?
He-Man has the power.
He-Man does have the power. But he doesn't really manifest anything except like a really fit physique.
And you know, his cat turns into this super cat.
Yeah, like Cringer goes from like seriously the wussiest cat ever to like battle cat. Destroy everyone.
Kinda ironic.
Somebody take these from me
Here, just
before I eat them all. It'll make me thirsty.
Well, everyone, welcome to Edge of Wonder, where we take weirdness to a whole different level here.
Yeah.
We're your hosts. I'm Ben.
And I'm Rob. Today, we're going to explore the human mind and how our brain is the most mysterious and powerful thing that exists in the entire universe. And if you don't believe us, just wait. After this episode, your mind will seriously be blown.
The question of what is truly the mind has been asked since man first came to understand that we have a mind. And did you know that there isn't really a clear definition of what the mind is or where the mind truly lives?
It is a common understanding that the brain and the mind are the same, but actually, this isn't really true. According to science, the mind makes up many things, such as consciousness, imagination, perception, thinking, intelligence, judgment, language, and memory.
Dan Siegel, a professor of psychiatry at the UCLA School of Medicine and author of the book Mind, A Journey to the Heart of Being Human, says that our minds cannot be confined to what's in our skulls or even our bodies. He explained a study he conducted in Namibia where the people seem to be much happier than they are in other places.
Siegel relayed the fact that the people there had a stronger sense of belonging, whereas in America, we are more isolated and disconnected from the world as a whole, and this shapes our own thought and mental process.
So what about the body, mind, matter, and soul? This is another age-old question. In Buddhist thought, the mind and matter are one and the same because they believe that everything is alive.
And it's not only in Buddhism and other Eastern beliefs, but also among people who study the human body outside of the realm of limited science. It is believed that the soul resides where the pineal gland is in the brain.
The pineal gland is about the size of a pea and is the body's biological clock. It is in the exact geometric center of the brain. Also, it has more blood flow than any other parts of the body aside from the kidney.
Did you just say my mind is the size of a pea, Ben?
I did, actually. That's what I'm saying.
Probably is. Also, after our research, the persistence of negative emotions such as fear, anger, and feelings of denial of one's own being affect the pineal gland negatively, which in turn affect the body in a negative way.
The pineal gland is also in the shape of a pine cone, which is why in almost every culture and even ancient drawings, we can find symbolism related back to a pine cone. It was found in Greece, Egypt, the Vatican, and so many more places. Even the Buddha's head is in the shape of a pine cone.
Artists of the Renaissance were also researchers using spirit and science together to enlighten to new ways of thinking and bring the world new kinds of art. As part of the beauty and intricacy of their pieces, they included things to do with the brain and mind. In Michelangelo's creation of Adam, for instance, he secretly included the anatomical structure of the brain. Do we really think it's a coincidence that the heavenly beings and God are depicted as part of the brain's structure and are all right around the pineal gland?
So what does all this mean? Well, ultimately, our minds have a connection to God or the divine. And we have the means to become spiritually awakened beings because our brains are so perfect that they are even more powerful than a supercomputer.
But unlike a computer, we can achieve goals and even do things that go far beyond the physics of our own reality. But before we get into that, let's get into some facts about our brains. Did you know that our brains process at least 100 billion bits of information per second? And some say it could be as high as 1 trillion bits per second.
There are some people who even believe that our minds can be faster than the speed of light. That gets deep into a conversation about quantum physics. For example, what about the remote viewers? I mean, they can see the sun or even other planets instantly, right? And isn't that traveling faster than light?
Well, Ben, science would probably say you're crazy for even suggesting that, or that your brain is the size of a pea. But if we're talking about other dimensions and realities existing, then maybe. But we are getting a bit off subject here.
Right, okay. But anyway, this is just the start. The brain can store over 1,000 terabytes of data, which would be the entire collection of the Library of Congress stored over 100 times. We know that we have over 100 billion neurons in our brains, and each one has an average about 5,000 synapses.
Now, some of these may only have 100 and some may have 15,000, so this is just a ballpark. But if each of these are carrying 4 bits of information, that is equivalent to 2 quadrillion bits or nearly 2,000 terabytes of data.
To get an idea how awesome our brains are, in 2013, Japanese researchers wanted to use a supercomputer to try matching the processing power of 1 second of activity from 1% of the brain.
1%.
1%.
Now in reality, that doesn't sound like it would be that hard to do, right? But get this. It took the 4th fastest supercomputer in the world at the time, the K computer, 40 minutes to crunch the calculations for a single second of brain activity. A single second.
So after learning all of this, it is obviously extremely important what we are feeding our brains and even what kind of thoughts we have throughout the day. If you think about it, we can manifest our own reality. If you only have negative thoughts, you will see the world as a dark, dreary place and won't have much success in life.
That's rough. On the other hand, if you have positive thoughts about the world and even about yourself, you will see the wonderful things that life has to offer. You will see more opportunities open up for you and people will enjoy being around you. You will naturally lift others up and inspire others to be more optimistic. So be positive, people.
Yeah. This plays directly into your own health as well. If you hold a lot of negative thoughts on others, the world, or life in general, you will find that you always feel depressed, sick, lack of self-confidence, and even fear taking chances. Harvard Medical School even published an article about how optimism can affect infections, heart disease, blood pressure, and overall health.
On the other hand, keeping positive thoughts will make you feel more energetic, healthier, and even younger looking, along with a better immune system overall. You'll also feel more balanced spiritually and physically because you're more likely to exercise, eat better, and attract healthier and happier people into your life. Dr. Bruce Harold Lipton is a developmental biologist who developed some views on epigenetics that have largely been ignored by the mainstream.
Yeah, in his book, The Biology of Belief, he claimed that DNA and inheritance are not what truly control people's biology, but instead that our beliefs do.
For example, if your family has a history of heart disease, instead of it being passed down in our genes, he believes from his research that we get the heart disease because of the constant thought and fear of it along with our lifestyles. Here he is in his own words.
Now we know from epigenetics, consciousness, lifestyle, belief systems, these are the ultimate controls of the gene. We know that if you got a cancer gene and that's what you believe, then you think I'm going to get the cancer. And then you get a cancer and you say the genes did it. And now we know, no, that there is no cancer gene. There is not one gene that causes cancer. Genes are correlated with cancer, meaning if your life is not in harmony and you have one of these genes, you can activate a cancer.
Dr. Lipton explained that we have to stop being the victim and start living in harmony, and that our own consciousness is actually controlling our genes by how we think. If we are constantly thinking we are sick, we will get sick. If we always think about how healthy we are, we are less likely to get sick.
Plutarch was a Greek philosopher from around 100 AD. He seemed to have a good understanding of how capable our human minds are, so much in fact that science today could probably learn a thing or two from him.
Yeah, he said, quote, "The mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be kindled." And also said, what we achieve inwardly can be carried outwardly.
That's awesome. His meaning was basically how we truly cultivate ourselves in our daily life will show on the surface. If we're kind and caring and compassionate, people will see that and even feel it. If we are selfish, cold, full of anger and hatred, this will also reflect on the surface.
Our minds can also set our own limitations. If we are constantly being told that something is impossible, we subconsciously restrain ourselves away from trying to achieve it. Since we are told it can't be done, we then believe in it.
To give an example, ever since they were able to record track run times, it was thought that no person could ever run a mile in less than 4 minutes. In fact, it became so ingrained in society that it seemed no one would even try to beat it. They even had a name for it, the 4-minute barrier.
Enter Dr. Roger Bannister, who initially finished 4th place in the 1952 Helsinki Olympics in the 1500-meter run. Even though he finished 4th, he did set the British record, which gave him a boost of confidence. Then in 1954 at Iffley Road Track in Oxford, with just minimal training since he was a practicing junior doctor at the time, he ran the mile and beat the 4-minute barrier at 3 minutes and 59.4 seconds.
Skin of his chin.
Barely.
He was the first person ever to do it. It was something that was never even thought conceivable. But the crazy part was that Bannister's record only lasted 46 days. After decades of runners never being able to beat this time, all it took was one person to prove to the world that it could be done, and people were running under 4 minutes one after another.
Currently, the record stands at 3 minutes and 43.13 seconds for Moroccan runner Hashim El Garouj.
Pretty good, Ben.
Yeah. Could we reach and achieve more by simply thinking that nothing is impossible?
These aren't the only stories we hear of people doing nearly superhuman feats. There is the famous one about a mother who lifted up a car, which we found is actually a true story.
Yes. So in 1982, a woman from Georgia named Angela Cavallo lifted a car 4 inches off the ground to rescue her teenage son, Tony. He was working on their 1964 Chevy Impala, and it slid off the jack, pinning him underneath while knocking him unconscious.
Angela said that she was saying prayers and asked God to give her strength to lift the car. And it seems that is exactly what happened. An 11-year-old boy named Johnny was visiting next door when he came out to help find neighbors to pull Tony out from under the car.
They took him to the hospital and miraculously found no signs of trauma or brain injury. The event happened on a Friday, and by Sunday he was on his way home from the hospital. Angela kept saying during the whole ordeal that all she was doing was saying prayers.
This is a positive story of just how powerful our minds can be when we are truly connected to the divine. Of course, there are unfortunately some negative ones too. In fact, many experiments that were and still are being carried out against people have been targeting this aspect of the mind.
We found one situation in the book Hypnotism, written in 1889 by Fredrik Bjornstrom and translated by the famous Swedish gymnast Baron Niels Puss, who wrote about a very unusual case.
In the 1800s, during Napoleon III's time, a scientist wanted to explore the relationship between the body and the mind, but needed subjects to experiment on. So he asked Napoleon if there were any prisoners he could use.
There was a man who was being sentenced to death, so Napoleon granted permission for the prisoner to be handed over to the scientist. The prisoner thought he was being taken away to be put to death by having his carotid artery severed.
But this is where it gets super interesting and disturbing. The scientist tied the man down on the table with a blindfold on. He wanted the man to hear everything that was going on, but made sure he couldn't see anything.
The scientist, and by the way, it doesn't mention his name, took a needle out and made a light scratch on the prisoner's body, but not deep enough to draw blood. Then he turned on a water tap just enough to drip water out and placed a bowl under it so he could hear the dripping sound from the water.
The scientists asked for complete silence as they all watched and waited to see how the man would react. The man, hearing the sound dripping for sure, thought that it was his own blood that was dripping. In 6 minutes, the prisoner died, thinking that his blood was being drained out of his body.
This man died because of his own psychological factors. In fact, if the blindfold were taken off, he would have realized that it was all in his mind. But this story tells a powerful principle. What we create and believe in our own imagination becomes our reality, which brings a parallel to the relationship between the mind and the body.
Which is why in my personal life, I'm Batman.
What is the subconscious? Did you know that the subconscious mind is about 95% of our brain activity? That includes when we dream, process the world around us, and many of our bodily functions. It is this way so you can focus on getting work done instead of telling your body when to secrete melatonin because it's getting dark and it's time to go to sleep.
I get it. It's like work, fart. For example, imagine if we had to relearn how to ride a bike or even drive a car every time we went out. Instead, we learn once and then our subconscious takes over and knows what to do so we can focus on the road and the cars around us instead of trying to teach ourselves how to drive.
Honestly, for some drivers, I think they never learned how to drive in the first place,
Yeah.
but that's another story. But other examples are martial arts or dance choreography. Once you know the moves in your body is flexible enough, you don't need to think about it. The moves are just there and your body knows what to do.
And that's why I got so many moves, Ben. But there's a downside to having the subconscious take over, our addictions. For example, we constantly feel the need to look at our phones, but we don't think about it. We just do it. Of course, extreme cases are being addicted to drugs.
However, once we become aware of the addiction, we can literally reprogram our minds to stop these habits. But it becomes harder to do the more we become addicted to them. Society plays a major role in this too.
If a child grows up in a horrible environment, it will affect them as they grow into adulthood. In many cases, they struggle with various addictions, lack empathy for others, and even commit crimes as a result of their trauma.
On the other side, if they have a loving and caring environment as that child grows older, they will want to help others who are struggling in life and will have a path for success. Of course, this isn't absolute, but you get the general idea here.
Definitely
There's
not
people
absolute.
on both sides,
Of course.
of course, but yeah.
Many studies have been conducted openly and in secret on how to control this aspect of the subconscious. The powers that be know this and have mastered this art of the subconscious mind. They can use anything from promotional ads to the mass media, movies and books, physical trauma, and even direct mind control.
Did you know that children on average watch about 1,680 minutes of television each week? By the time a child finishes elementary school, that child has witnessed over 8,000 murders on TV, real and fake, from either the news or movies. Also, they would have seen over 20,000 30-second television commercials each year.
Yeah, 8,000 just Bambi dying.
Bambi? Bambi, come here. Look.
Because they've been watching Disney,
Yeah, I mean, all of that's supposedly part of the whole trauma.
Yeah,
too,
and
so-
like cartoons seem really innocent on the surface, right? But they can be pretty violent when you really look at them. And most of the mainstream ones really lack substance. There was a cartoon in the 90s called The Ren and Stimpy Show, which was one of the grossest shows on TV at the time, with its dark humor and even sexual jokes.
I hated that show.
And then, of course, there are movies made for teens, such as the Netflix series Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. That doesn't hide the fact that the whole show is about Satanism and worshiping Satan and hailing Satan.
So what are we putting in our own minds? Especially think about horror movies. They can affect our dreams and can even affect our daily lives by slowly installing fear into us. How many people in the world have a fear of clowns? If we never saw an evil clown in our lives and only saw funny circus ones, would we still have a fear of clowns?
Yes, we would.
Maybe you.
Yes, we would.
You know, growing up, I never had a fear of clowns because I didn't
But my brother,
see any scary movies.
Woo!
My brother was.
I can just send him a gif of It from the 80s,
Yeah.
that movie, and he's like, stop it, dude.
So I didn't really understand why. I had a fear of puppets.
Yeah, Child's Play?
Marionettes.
Oh, those things are freaky too,
Those
man.
freaked me
Yeah.
out. The Child Play one kind of freaked me out too. But
Anyway, all of this begs the question, what kind of long-term effect does this have on our bodies and collectively as the human race? Think about songs on the radio too. Why is society allowing songs like WAP to be played on the radio, yet we're canceling everything else like Dr. Seuss?
yeah, have you even read the lyrics to WAP? WAP?
Just
WAP?
don't.
If you read that out loud, you could barely say half of it on TV, radio, or anywhere else.
And somehow it won a Grammy.
So why is it okay for these words to be made into a song that you can't even we can't even show it? They're so bad that we can't even show any part of the lyrics here in this video, in this episode. And this thing won a Grammy.
And it won a Grammy.
Doesn't make sense.
This is just the beginning. Why aren't parents up in arms about this? But we're focused on canceling Dr. Seuss and Gina Carano. And a lot of popular songs nowadays are about actually being stuck in a bad relationship, but the woman supposedly enjoys it?
Yeah, think about Lady Gaga's Bad Romance or Eminem and Rihanna's song Love the Way You Lie, which is about two people in an unhealthy relationship who are both obsessed with feeling pain as he threatens to kill her if she leaves him even though he is cheating on her.
You just hurt my head with that whole story.
That's what the song is
Yeah,
about.
I know. Then you have over-the-top sexualized videos such as that of Katy Perry's videos, which promote sex in nearly all of them, mixed with black and white tiles, the Illuminati. I mean, it's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
So these are fine to play on radio or TV, but if Dr. Seuss were read over the radio, good Lord, the world would seem to freak out.
Video games are another example. When Rob and I were growing up, the most violent game that was around was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for Mortal Kombat.
Mortal Kombat, yeah.
That was like the
Or
most-
maybe you could say Street Fighter 2 was violent, and because you
Yeah.
know you're kicking everyone's butt. But Mortal Kombat was
Mortal
like
Kombat was
pulling
like,
spinal
oh my
cords
gosh,
out of,
that was like
pulling hearts out of people.
that was like the most controversial
Seriously.
thing that happened when we were kids. But when you look at the original Mortal Kombat compared to what is out now, I mean, it's like a whole different world.
Yeah.
Literally, different universe.
And now video games have realistic gameplay along with insane graphic violence that shows murders, drug deals, sex, stealing cars, and everything else you could think of. It's a long way from having Mario squishing a frickin' Goomba with his feet. Check out our series on Goombas, the gaming industrial complex, for more of this insane rabbit hole on video games.
Join Edge of Wonder as we expose the truth about these video games in Hooked, the gaming industrial complex.
So does playing video games affect our minds? Again, what are we feeding our minds? What are we feeding our souls? No matter which religion or belief you look into, it seems all upright spiritual teachers agree on one thing. You become what you think.
The powers that be know this and use trauma as a form of mind control to get us to become used to violence, hence the clown movies. Then they can all call on us to act when needed. Think this is an exaggeration? This is exactly what the Chinese Communist Party did during the Cultural Revolution. They actually forced children to watch public executions, traumatizing all of the firstborn.
Yeah, so this is a bit intense. At first, they all screamed, got sick, and were terrified. Then as they got older, They love the carnage and would be unhappy if there wasn't blood being sprayed everywhere.
Bread in circuses, but it should be called blood in circuses.
Yeah. They didn't know it, but they were secretly being groomed by Mao to become his new Red Guards.
Today, we're constantly being bombarded with murder, sex, blood, and wanting to look cool because we saw a poster in Times Square of an actor smoking a cigarette. Maybe in the 60s.
In the 90s.
Yeah,
that
true.
Was in the 90s.
Yeah, you're right.
Things kind of changed when it came to the
I think you're right. It was like the 2000s things started to change. All of this has been subliminal messages that our conscious mind stores and remembers.
But let's talk about a fun experiment we might all know on the human mind, the selective attention test. You can now find a few of these online. In the video, it asks a simple question. How many times are the people who are wearing white shirts passing a ball?
Most people don't notice this, but in the middle of the video, a man in a gorilla suit walks in the middle of everyone, then walks out. We don't notice it because we are focused on the people in white. They also did this experiment on selective attention with passing a soccer ball.
Your mind automatically blocks everything else out. So when the gorilla walks in, most people don't even see it since their mind is not paying attention to anything that is not white. I mean, the first time I saw it, I couldn't even believe it. But we are so focused on counting the number of times they are passing the ball that we don't see it.
In another study by the same group of people who first did the gorilla test, they had someone who was on the experiment ask for directions from an older man and showed him a piece of paper. Soon 2 men carrying a door passed between them, and while the older man couldn't see him, they switched out the man who asked him directions with a completely different man.
The older man continued on talking to the replacement without having any idea he was talking to a completely different person. The researchers said only 50% of the people they approached realized they were talking to a completely different person.
This YouTube channel, Daniel Simons, has all kinds of interesting psychological studies with different videos, including photos that change in plain sight to see if you can notice what changed in the image.
Our minds are like a constantly growing child, always learning and experiencing new things. Whatever you feed it will dictate the outcome of how you perceive and even shape your reality, world, your body, your spiritual awareness, even your spirit.
As we are more aware of the world around us and what is going into our subconscious mind, we can reject the negative things and focus on the positive. For example, we can consciously choose to spend more time in nature instead of watching TV.
Also, we can be more aware of our own addictions, such as our phones, computers, video games, etc. But aside from the human mind, what about animals or even plants? Is it possible that plants not only have a mind, but can even read minds? I mean, this sounds crazy, right?
Well, join us next time as we explore this amazing adventure, as well as more stories of experiments on the human mind. We'll get into things like water memory, and then, of course, what would happen if we were able to truly unlock and use the full capacity of our brains. You know, limitless.
What could humans achieve if we were able to do that, and why haven't we yet? We'll explore all of this and more in Power the Mind Part 2. So thank you so much, everyone, for supporting us. And until next time, we'll see you out
on the edge
of the mind.
Hey guys, hope you're enjoying this episode.
If you want to watch the rest and get access to our full catalog of content with hundreds of videos that will keep you entertained for hours and hours, subscribe to rise.tv.
Also, don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you don't miss a single new drop.
Yeah, and we'll see you out
on the edge.